Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the WRRAP Podcast with me, Lee G. Full crew this week, Jamie, James and Harley. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
And James had to remember to unmute. Nice one. Yeah, we're off to a flyer. Right, okay, we've got a ton of stuff to get through. Well, we haven't got a ton of stuff to get through, but we've got some really points. There's a lot of points on one subject we need to get through tonight. So let's start with drink of the week. So I'm going to kick off this week on drink of the week. So I've got a bottle called Old Crafty Hen, which
Good choice.
is I mean it's an oak aged ale, and it's strong. It's 6.5%. I think I might need it to get through tonight. But the wanky bollocks is we take our legendary 6-strong ale, aged gently in oak vats for many months, and blended with old speckled hen to create this masterpiece. A perfectly crafted premium ale bursting with malt, toffee, and dried fruit. So that last bit sounds like a chocolate bar you have at Christmas, but it's quite nice. I quite like it. So that's my and. I mean, you've missed out the head has got on it, but that was a good, for those on YouTube. There was a good solid head on there before as well. It was a proper beer. Right, who wants to go next then? Go on then, Harley. Go on, you can.
Oh, and then continuing my tour of Glamorgan Brewing. So this is Kurugoslas, which I've definitely butchered the pronunciation because I don't know how I got a name for GCSE Welsh. So the monkey bollocks on this is named after the village in Carmarthenshire where it was first brewed. This well-balanced beer, which they put the Welsh word for it, is a love letter to the classic bitters we grew up on, which is proper wanky. Just saying. But this one is actually great because on the ingredients it goes water, malted barley, wheat, hops, and it tells you what the hops are. Because I know there are some people who like that sort of thing. And if you are interested, it's Challenger, Goldings, US Cascade. I have no idea what any of that fucking means.
No.
But it tastes nice.
But mine's got toffee in, and I have no idea. So I think my wanky bollocks outwanks your wanky bollocks. I'll be honest with you, mate.
No, you just got special festive wank. Now that's a podcast title.
That's something for another time. James, what have you got, mate?
I'm back onto my final can of Juice Forsyth, the popular one. I would just like to put around the top. Like you said, it's brewed in the capital of the north, and it's beers with character. So I automatically know whoever brews this, I don't want to be friends with, because if you say your beer has character, then you are the most boring man ever.
Okay.
And what is the capital of the north? Where does the north start?
N. There you go. Jamie, yours.
I have got a Welsh craft lager from Axel Jack Brewery, who are based in my steg. There it is. It's 4.5%. And there is some wanky bollocks with this. So I'm struggling to see the font on this, but right. Using a blend of 2 malted barleys to produce the classic appearance and behaviour of lager and added oats for flavour. This craft brew also includes a hop from the Czech Republic, used in the brewing of traditional Central European lagers and pilsners. Clean and crisp on the palate, with forward notes of citrus, grapefruit and lemon, and a lingering sense of aromatic earthiness and subtle spices. Now that's some wanky bollocks right there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Jamie wins wanky bollocks for this week. If there was a wanky bollocks trophy, which there will be at the end of the season, that's right up there with the wanky bollocks. That is, mate.
It's a nice lager as well, by the way. It's very nice. It's not too crafty tasting, if you see what I mean. It does taste like a proper lager, because some of these craft lagers have that sort of like elderflower taste to them, don't they? But this is all right, actually. So, yeah, Axel Jack Brewery. Cheers.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we're going to need a decent amount of alcohol to get through tonight, then, gents. So, James, Jamie, let's start with the news desk, and then we'll head on to Fantasy League before we get into the iffy stuff.
Right, okay, well, let's start with the big news then that happened last week. So George North has now officially retired from international rugby. North announced last week that he's ended a 14-year test career after the Wales-Italy game on Saturday. And, well, the list of achievements speak for themselves, don't they? So 121 Wales caps, 47 tries, 2 Grand Slams, 2 Six Nations titles, 2 World Cup semi-finals, and 2 tours with the British and Irish Lions. What a fantastic servant to Welsh rugby. It did come as a little bit of a shock when it was first announced, but then when you think about it, him going over to France, I suppose he wanted that send-off, didn't he? He didn't want his career to sort of fizzle out in the same way as maybe Thomas Francis's and Ross Moriarty's have done since they moved to Pro D. So he wanted that big send-off, and he felt the time was right. But fantastic servant to Welsh rugby, brilliant player. And I guess a lot of rugby fans' favourite memory of George North, the thing he's most remembered for is, of course, Israel Folau in the Lions test against Australia 2030 when he lifted him up and carried him. It was a fantastic moment. But question for you guys, are there any particular George North moments that stand out for you, either for Wales or a club level in Wales?
Well, boy, do I have the podcast for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, because we and Cardiff were the only ones recording last week, we actually scrapped the episode that we had planned and just ended up doing a tribute to George North. And his time at the Ospreys has been stunted, yes, but he's actually given us some very, very good memories, and just sort of that mini resurgence he had under the Ospreys and then going back in at 13 for Wales. But if I'm talking about that standout George North moment, it would have to be, I got 2 in my head. I've got the try in Dublin in 2012, where he just crashed it. He takes about 4 players over in the corner of the Aviva. And then that second one, I think it's 2012. 2012 we would have been. Anyway, and then the second one is his dad storming the pitch in Paris after the sole try in Paris in 2013 that was on the way to the championship. It's just anything for the Lions. I'm a big 2013 Lions nerd anyway. I mean, he was just a freak on that tour.
Yeah.
For me, it's like the very first Sky. The first try he scored was quite simple and straightforward, but in his first season, I think on Judgment Day, and he scored against the Dragons, and it was just like a little. He went outside, and he cut back inside, and it just kind of popped off Aled Davis, and just kind of came out of nowhere. Like on the tight up view, you don't actually see him; you just see like a streak of red going past, and so yeah, it's stuff like that you look back when, like you say, when he was in his prime, that was fantastic. What I would say is, so Carwyn did a poem about him, which we put on our YouTube channel and we put on TikTok as well.
Very good too.
Yeah, it was. 30,000 views on TikTok and 2,500 likes on TikTok. I don't know if it's Carwyn or George North or a combination of the two, but yeah, it worked really, really well, and it's still on our social media feeds and all of that if people want to go back and have a listen and have a look at it. But it was, pretty good. Enjoyed that one.
Yeah, he did a good job at that, Carwyn. Fair play. Harley, do you have a particular North moment that stands out for you?
I do, but I just want to say with Carwyn, he sort of, after we'd finished recording our interview with David Allen from the board, he basically sort of went, I was just penning this poem. What do you think? He was really showing embarrassed about it. I was like, that's fucking brilliant, mate. Let's get that out now.
Yeah.
But for me, George North, there's probably two standouts. One's got to be that hat trick against Fiji in the 2011 World Cup. After everyone was there, the ghost of 2007, and he just comes onto the pitch. I'm pretty sure he came in off the bench and just absolutely dismantled them. It was just wonderful. The other one for me has got to be 2017. So Wales had a bit of a shocking tournament, and they spent the whole, and everyone was spending the whole time saying, it's all George North being shit. He's terrible. He needs to pull up performance. And then he just pulls out like one of his best ever games against Ireland. And it is usually against Ireland. He seemed to always have a good game.
It's true, yeah.
And he's just back to his barnstorming physical best, because there were always times like when he was on the left wing, he was really proactive, and then he'd be switched to the right. And it's a thing with Welsh wingers, like getting moved from the left wing to the right wing just completely mishook because fuck the Tories. What?
Nice reference.
Yeah. Let's carry on then, Jay.
Okay, let's talk about some contract news. So Ospreys have signed 21-year-old lock Will Greatbanks. That's a good name, isn't it? Will Greatbanks. From Pro D2 team Sawyer. Greatbanks said, I've spoken to Toby and it was clear to see that something special is being built at the Ospreys. I can't wait to get started. Fair enough. Greatbanks is Welsh qualified through his father, who was born in Wales. So that's quite an interesting pickup. And then going over to the Scarlets, back rower Ben Williams, he signed a new deal with the Scarlets. The 21-year-old has made 19 appearances for the senior side since 2022. And the last bit of news before we move on, I'm quite pleased actually about this. Di Young, he's back in rugby. So Di Young has been appointed as Cardiff and Vale College Rugby Academy's new head of rugby. It's Di Young's first job since he left Cardiff Rugby following those allegations of bullying. So good on him. I've always rated Di Young as a coach. I've said that a few times on this pod. It's good to see him back involved in Welsh rugby. And yeah, that's the news for this week.
Okay. So before we move on to Fantasy League with James, I just want to drop a quick note in at the start because it's important for me. So some of you may or may not know that I'm doing an open uni degree, and I'm after 6 years I've been doing this, and I'm at the very end of it, and I've got to do a survey and then analyze a survey and all of that kind of stuff. So obviously I've chosen to survey ex-rugby players and the effects of the social environment and around the rugby club. So I could really do with listeners' help to fill it in. It takes about 10 minutes. It's completely anonymous, so I don't see names. I don't know who's done it and who hasn't. It takes about 10 minutes or 5 minutes if you're going really quick. And I'll put the link on all our social medias. I'll put a link in the blurb that we put with all of the pods and all that kind of stuff. But if you could share it around your clubs or whatever as well, it is something that I want to do in future. I think there's a lot of stuff going around, and we'll talk about it after about concussion and the effects of concussion and repeated head injuries. And when I talk to some of the players I played with, it's not just at the very top level of the game, it's all the way down the tree, right the way down to the bottom. So yeah, if you could fill that in, it would be a massive benefit to me. So yeah, appreciate that. That's me pulling rank. It's the first time I've done that. I feel powerful now. Right, James, let's do fantasy rugby, mate. This will take me back down a couple of pegs.
Let me just close all my resend tabs. Right. So, final round of the WRRAP League. I reckon we start with Carwyn Watch, actually. Let's see where he ended. Carwyn, he ended in 39th, which, it's not bad. I mean, I finished at 33rd. Jamie, whereabouts were you in the end?
Oh, you didn't do it.
You were in.
Yeah,
Jamie finished in 22nd.
I was 27th. So Jamie wins.
Jamie does win out of us four, which is a lot. No, what do you want about Cardiff? Don't win anything; they just restore pride.
Go check the tapes of the World Cup Fantasy League again.
I wasn't
with all of you. Last year's women's and men's Six Nations.
Okay, so let's go through the top 10. So in 10th, finishing 10th for the whole thing is It's Still 0-0 Boys on 1,863. Then Missile Panda, who I believe, is that Leslie on Twitter? On X, sorry. Big Scottish fan. On 1867. Morgan Dobbin finishes in 8th, 1878. Hatley AWJ, which is Dav Hatley, is listener of the Ospreys pod, 1896. Utter Insanity, 1899. In 5th is Kamicha, 1900. Fat Boys Gut Club, with 1,910 points. Josh L with 1,957. Wooden Spoon Contenders finished second, which means our winner with 1,971 points is Ivan.
So we after we said on last week's pod for various people to get in touch and all of that kind of stuff, and a few people did, but I've forgotten who, and I've forgotten where they got in touch with us. So Ivan, if you're listening, get in touch again, mate, because I'm fairly sure that you were one of the ones that got in touch. Yeah, drop us a line again, and we'll get you on next week's pod, and we'll just have a chat about your fantasy league and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, maybe next year Harley will strap a set of balls on and actually, put his money where his mouth is and play the game with us. But never mind. One day, Harley, you might get successful at it, fella. Okay, fair enough. Right. So let's move on to Wales, Italy. So before we start on Wales, Italy, let's just put a little bit of context into the conversation that we're going to have. There's been a lot, and I know it feels raw for people, and wooden spoon, and there's a certain generation of people that aren't used to wooden spoons and what have you, yeah. But there's no excuse for some of the stuff that's been on social media over the weekend. So we'll talk about that at the end. But when we're on a conversation now, if we're not slagging people off, that's not us. That's it. And you're sitting there and expecting us to slag people off and say he was shit and he was shit and he was shit. That's not what we're going to do. Okay, we'll talk about the game, and if somebody was poor, we'll try and put that constructively. But if you want to sit there and slag people off, then this is the wrong pod for you. There are other pods there that will sit there and slag other people off. This isn't one of them. So that's just putting that there, because that really knocked me over the weekend with some of the comments that were there. So, James, let's start with you then. Wales, Italy. Oh, you didn't watch the game, did you? I picked the wrong one.
Listeners, let me give you some context, right? I live in, and Harley will attest to this, the season doesn't stop, really, in England for Six Nations games. So I was playing. I played out at Portsmouth this week. And the other team quickly cottoned on to the fact that I was Welsh. And every line out or stop in play, they would try and put me off by shouting the Italy-Wales score. So, yeah, that's how I was finding out the score. I haven't watched the game. I haven't watched the highlights. I don't intend to. Because, quite frankly, why would I want to depress myself more? I've watched the Scrum 5 stuff, which we'll talk about later. Everything I have comes from Squid Rugby, who I said, please just give me a summary of what actually happened in the game. So, yeah. I played well, though, if anyone's wondering.
Well. He wasn't. But anyway, thanks anyway for telling us.
Yeah. Right. So, Jamie, you actually watched. I mean, you were watching Newport, but you have seen the game since. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was in London on the weekend. I went to watch Wimbledon, Newport County. Newport won 2-0. Great result, great performance. So I didn't see the game live. But it was quite funny because when I was at the football, I was checking my phone for the scores. Every time I went on Twitter to check the score, Italy was scoring points. And I said that to my mate. I said, every time I'm logging on now, check the score, Italy are scoring points. And my mate Rob said to me, the best thing to do is just don't look. Don't log on and see what happens. So I didn't check the score until the final whistle went to the football. And then I saw the score, it was 24-21. I thought, oh, actually, Wales had done all right. But then, of course, it sank in that Wales had still won the wooden spoon and still lost. So I watched the game back on the train home from London. And I have to say, I was shocked at how bad Wales were. I had really no intention of watching the game in full. I was just going to do what Jay said and just watch the highlights. But I thought, no, I got to watch the game in full, because if I'm going to talk about it in the pod, I got to see just how bad Wales were. And by Christ, Wales were bad. I think what disappointed me was there was a lot of talk about Wales embracing the pressure. You know, seeing how big this game was, knowing how big this game was, and trying to avoid that wooden spoon. I honestly thought Wales would come out with a bit of purpose, you know, and it was just so lackluster, and I was really disappointed. There was no urgency, there was no direction, there was no leadership. It was just a really poor performance from Wales. Really, really disappointed. And, you know, I made some notes during the game. The takeaways for me, there was just so many errors, you know, so many unforced errors from individuals. So, you know, looking at the game and reading the takeaways. So Sam Costello, missing free kicks to touch from penalties. Now, that's not acceptable. I'm sorry. You know, I know Sam Costello is learning on the job. I get it. He's new. He's learning his craft at test level. To do it once, it happens to the best of them. But to miss touch from a kick 3 times with penalties, that's just not acceptable. And then you got Nick Tompkins then, who for me had his worst game playing for Wales. I mean, every time he went in contact, he just kept losing the ball. He had an absolute stinker. And it did make me think maybe we should have kept Owen Watkin at 12, looking back. But that was the decision they went with, and it didn't pay off. You know, the neck roll from Adam Beard. Adam Beard does a neck ball when we're on the attack. Italy win a penalty, they kick it, and that leads then to Lorenzo Pani's try. I mean, it was a great try, by the way, but it came from that neck roll from Adam Beard, so that was disappointing. And then in the first half, you got that miscommunication then between Sam Costello and Cam Winnett. No communication, both called for it. Ended up being a knock-on, which led to an Italian scrum in Wales's 22. The scrum was a disaster. Dylan Lewis had a really tough time. I mean, Daniel Fischetti took him to the cleaners, quite frankly. So there was no platform whatsoever. It was Wales's worst performance, I thought, throughout this tournament. That was a really poor and disappointing performance. And we talked about George North there earlier. What a sad way for him to end his international career, because the WRU put out that image of him on crutches, walking down the tunnel. That is not the farewell that George North deserved. Really, really grim afternoon, I thought, for him. But it's just a very disappointing way to end what's been a very disappointing campaign. Like, Wales have played well in patches. There's been some glimpse of encouragement. You know, guys like Cam Winnett have been great, Rio Dyer, Alan Wainwright, Alex Mann. But to end on that note, the way we did, to put in that performance, it just leaves a sour taste in the mouth. And I'm afraid the stats are really grim. So Wales' first Six Nations wooden spoon since 2003. Wales have now lost 12 of the past 13 Six Nations matches. This is 7 successive Six Nations home defeats. And we had a successful World Cup campaign. We proved a lot of people wrong by getting out of that pool. But since Gatland's return to Wales, he's been in charge of 10 Six Nations matches and he's won just 1 game. So the stats are there, it's grim, and I honestly do not know now where Welsh Rugby goes from here. You know, I think Welsh Rugby, we talked about on our Dragon's Lair pod last night, me and Gavin said now Welsh Rugby is in an existential crisis now, and it does feel like that way. Welsh Rugby is in the shit, but we've only got ourselves to blame. Because for far too long, as we all know, when Wales were winning trophies, they were winning Grand Slams and championships, they ignored the pro game. They underfunded the pro teams for too long because they were so top heavy, the WRU. They didn't care about the grassroots. They didn't care about the pro game. And now the chickens have come home to roost. We are reaping what we've sowed. And that's down to the WRU's mismanagement of the pro game and the underfunding. And now we are where we are. So it's really grim times for Welsh Rugby. And I honestly do not know now where we go from here. But I do know that big decisions have to be made. There needs to be a strategy and some clear thinking because Welsh Rugby is in crisis, big time.
I was going to say we'll talk about the future after we've talked about the game. But,
of course, yeah.
If somebody wants to take Jamie's soapbox away, I dare you to.
I'll hop in. I have actually watched the game. Like James, I was playing on the weekend, and I'll be honest, I felt a lot like most of the pack, which was somehow ending up with shit ball coming from even worse ball and just getting absolutely fucking battered. The only difference is they at least got a losing bonus point out of it. But going back to say, there was nothing new. That is an issue there. It's all been the same things, and it's been the same thing since Gatland left the first time. We don't seem to have any way of getting game line success reliably. It's too much one-up runners. The scrum's a fucking issue. When the line-up works, it's great, but then we're not getting the opportunities to do it. And it's stupid errors every time. And I don't think it matters who you chuck in. I think you're absolutely right. Gatland had his plan for a big farewell for North, and with, knowing Tompkins is probably the best balance for him. But frankly, Owen Watkins was actually giving us game line. He's a much steadier hand at 12, which helps when you've got an experienced 10 instead of being a full-on chaos monkey. That's not a slot on Tompkins, that's just how he plays, which when you've got a very experienced 10 like Owen Farrell or Dan Bigger, they know how to manage that and to get the best out of him. When you're learning on the job, what you don't want is the person who's supposed to be your release valve to be going fucking crazy. So that's why I think it improved so much when Mason Grady came in at 12, because Costello was like, right, I don't know what else to do. Right, go make 10 yards. And it worked because he's a big lad. I had an argument with you about the clashing heads with Winnett and Costello. If you look how Wales set it, their backfield, that was Winnett's ball all day. It was in his half. Costello should have been there ready for the clearance kick. That's how backfield set up.
Yeah, but he's running onto the ball, mate.
They're both running onto it. Costello was supposed to be taking that wider thing. He was supposed to be there for a kick from wider.
I think the issue is
Costello can ping it.
I think the issue is what Jamie said, is there was no communication between the two.
You can hear them both saying it's my ball, but none of them.
No. And
that's why Winnett looks so annoyed, because he's like, I've actually been marshalling backfield all season and doing very well at it. Costello's had 3 games outside the Six Nations and World Cup.
Anyway, go on.
It's the same issues. And then how is this scrum like? When you take all these players and you put them in, even the Cardiff props, yes, they're not great in the scrum time, but they're at least holding their own against the equivalent players in Benetton. Gareth Thomas is, fantastic scrummager for the Ospreys. Dylan Lewis has been playing quite well off the bench for Harlequins. What are they being told to do scrum time? That is just causing it to be. Hopefully James can come in being the resident front rower. But I don't get why it's so bad, and it hasn't. And the only consistent thing, because we've changed to different players, we've had different head coaches, the only consistent thing is the forwards coach. So is it how he's telling them to scrummage? Because he's always opening interviews about how he wants it to be a pushing contest, which we saw against France. We will fucking lose if we're up against big lads. So it's really, one thing I would say is we got a lot more impact and go forward when the bench came on, because that was where anyone who could do ball carrying was basically on the bench. And it does make you wonder, should you have changed that selection slightly? But then, the second row, you either lose the fantastic work David Jenkins is doing in the second row, or you lose Adam Beard's line-out option. Mackenzie Martin has less caps than I do for Sidmouth second team.
I'm liking the comparison. That's not even a joke.
I have more caps for a rugby team than Mackenzie Martin, and I've basically started picking up the rugby ball this year. So you can't really start him, and some news came out just before the Italy game about Josh Adams. So he's having to have his knees drained, everything. So we've all been saying, look, it's clear as day he's not fit. They've now released an article saying it's so why was he selected? Even if you're not in your long-term plans, maybe you do bring in a Keelan Giles, because it's someone who isn't experienced. At least he's experienced at regional level. It may not be what you want, but it's someone who's there. Or you start Grady, who has been playing very well on the wings of Cardiff. It's just, I'll be honest, it was just this tournament. That Italy game, I think, was a complete microcosm for everything that has been going wrong with that Wales squad for this whole block.
You want me to talk about scrums? Because I will.
We're going to assume that James knows what he's talking about here. Now let's just be careful. James, tell us about scrummages.
So you look at that front row on the weekend, right? So you have Dylan Lewis, who notoriously wasn't the best scrummager when he was at the Blues, right? He was known for his work rate around the field, his work over the ball. he was a fine, like, as in average scrummager. He's had his moments. I'm thinking back in South Africa last year, the Tour of South Africa, showed up very well there. So let's say you're working with at best a 6.5 out of 10 tight head, right? You've got Gareth Thomas, who is a good scrummager, but he is not a technically good scrummager. He's not a loose head that's going to get under you. He's probably like a loose head who's going to go through you. He's farmer strength type thing, right? And then you have Elliot D in the middle, who I love Elliot D, and I've said this to Jamie every time. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's an underrated ball carrier. I think he's a great around the park. But he is very small, right? So instantly, if you're saying out of that three, Gareth Thomas is the strongest there, you've got 2/3 of that front row is underpowered. You look at that Italian front row, that's pure, that's Italian beef. That's the good stuff. That's that good bolognese. That's the stuff cooked in red wine, right? So instantly, if you're going to go off Hump's comments and say this is a pushing contest, then you're buggered. Now, what do you change now? Well, obviously, tight head is a problem for us. We haven't got tight head, right? Really, and the only one you can think of is maybe Thomas Francis, but he's old and he's not coming back to Wales. So instantly there, you take away Thomas Francis. Now, the glimpses I've seen of Harry O'Connor, he's a big lad, strong lad, technically sound, but is raw, right? Is very raw. And the test arena is not the place to sharpen your tool belt. Right? And I'm going to be nice to Scarlet's boys this week because, quite frankly, it's getting fucking boring now.
That's not like you.
Yeah, but no, he's got, and I said this to Hugh Griffin, right? Scarlet's with props, right? And it's the same with Cardiff a bit. They've got all the talent there, but there's no development in terms of prop pathway. Prop pathways are very different to like a 10 or a centre or a 7, right? Because it's a specialist position, right? That requires a very specialist set of skills. So you've got someone like Dylan Lewis who is only now, what is he, 29, is going to Harlequins where he's working under Bomb, right? It's not often I agree with Stephen Thomas from Wales Online, right? He put out his article saying Nicky Smith was injured at the start of the Six Nations, right? Fair enough, but he wasn't by the end. There is no shame in calling up Nicky Smith, even if it just shows up your scrum, right? And again, Kenzie Matthias, I'm sure he has. He's not put himself in the best light in terms of scrummaging this season, right? Thinking back to the Scarlets Cardiff game at the Park, really struggled there. Last year against Ospreys, he really struggled. So why have him on the bench when you could just call up Nicky Smith with 46 caps to just sit there, maybe come on, win a penalty or two? Evan Lloyd, right? I said this last week. It's not Evan Lloyd's fault. He's very green. He's played 156 minutes of rugby, right? He's got to come on. There were 2 caps on between the 3 front rows on the weekend. 3 if you count uncapped 1 that Harry O'Connor has against the Barbarians. That is a joke, right? Now, I'm not saying Tom Boter is the answer. I'm not saying that calling up Sam Parry to sit on the bench instead of Evan Lloyd is the answer, right? What I'm saying is you've got the front row is not a place where you cut your teeth at international level when you're learning rugby, right? It's the exact same way that on the weekend when I played this 13 game, which is a mixture of vets and Colts coming up to senior rugby, where we had an 18-year-old saying, literally freshly turned 18-year-old hooker saying, can I play front row this game? I was like, right, when do you turn 18? Last week. No, you're not doing that for your first game against a bunch of 45-year-old men. It's not the place to. You've got to train. You've got to do all this. There's 2 caps on that front row bench. That is despicable for me.
The issue is, though, James, it is at some point you have to develop. At some point, everybody's got to start with 0 caps, and everybody's got to take. And I think the issue is having 3 of them all in the same position at the same time.
Yeah.
And Gatland can't turn around and say, well, this is what I was handed. This is 10, 15 years worth of his development, his control of the Welsh game. And we'll talk about this in a minute, the difference between Gatland and Hansen, is Gatland isn't involved in anything other than that 25, that 35 players, maybe 40 if he gets a few more in. And I think that's where he's realizing now that, what you're saying is bang on right. And I said it to you last week. Why have we got Kemsley Mathias there, who I've seen him through the ramp,
to be fair.
But he's a real decent player. But like you say, you're going from, I think he's played maybe 2 games in 40 minutes for the Scarlets over the season, and then you go right now, go and play international rugby. That's not what you need to do. And you would have thought somebody like Gatland would be able to say, actually, all right, I'll have him in training camp because he's part of the future, but he's in training camp, and then he goes back, and then next year we'll know what he's doing when he's coming. So
let me take you through something I've been noticing. So I've been going back and watching, and there is a point to this, right? I've been watching, it started off because we were covering Ospreys versus Munster this week on the Irie. And I went back to the semi-final win in 2012, right? It was Paul James's last game at the time. So he had 168 caps for Ospreys at the time. Let's call it that, right? Who was the next cab off the rank was Ryan Bevington at the time, who was touted to be one of the next big props in Wales, never really worked, who got injured. From there, right, if you look at just loose ends now, if you look at the development of loose ends, just at the Ospreys, there was a conveyor belt because they were being brought through at the right time. Okay, so you had, at one point, you had Duncan Jones, Paul James, Ryan Bevington, Nicky Smith, and then Mark Thomas, right? That was like your conveyor belt of props going through. Now, that filtered up then to Wales, and that's just the Ospreys now. I'm thinking at the Scarlets, you had Samson Lee, right? You had, hockey, Ken Owens, right? But there was a clear progression at the time of caps rolling in, because all of a sudden they were rolling into their first international camps. I remember Nicky Smith made his debut in the 2014-2015 season. By the time he went into that first international camp, he'd had hundreds of minutes at pro level. What we're seeing now is because of a lack of development. This comes from the regional, is as much the regional fault as it is lack of funding and lack of resources, is that players are being parachuted into a camp now, like Evan Lloyd, like Alex Mann, like Cam Winnett, like Mackenzie Martin, right, with no minutes, because that's what we're being forced to because of the when Gatland left, he hadn't capped anyone new from the golden generation, or the ones he had capped, didn't work out. So look at James Davis, never really worked out at international level, had to retire due to injury. Various other players, Josh Turnbull never really made it international level. Josh McLeod never got capped under Gatland, but was always injured. Ollie Griffiths, Harrison Kennedy. Going to Pivac, then you had the willy-nilly selection, right? And then this is all in Gatland. In Gatland's face, he's had to do it now. And unfortunately, the front row is the place where you're going to suffer the most. You can get away with it at back row, or you can get away with it really at 10, right? You can't get away with it at front row. You will. It pains me. That's my finished rant on the front row. I won't talk about it anymore.
One thing I'll just before we move on, and because before blood vessels start bursting in James' head, if you look at the warm-ups, Gatland was trying to do so. You'd have Will Davis King being put in with, Gareth Thomas and Elliot D. Right, it's not the strongest front row, but it's 2 experienced internationals and 1 newbie. Kemsley Mathias was with like Elias, so you've got a club teamship, and Thomas Francis. They were trying to put these you're at least trying to have like an experienced player in that front row each time. I think the problem is like Evan Lloyd, Gatland even said Evan Lloyd wasn't supposed to play the Six Nations. But why, when Elias was in any doubt at all, did you not call up a Sam Parry, even if it was just to sit on that bench that one game, just so that you've got someone who knows what it is, especially if you're going to decide that the two younger props you have given caps and minutes to, you're not going to bother, you're going to leave them holding tackle bags for a week. If you're going to bring on like give a prop on his debut, don't put him next to two players who've got one cap each. Because the one prop, even though it's his second time being named on the bench of the Six Nations, you didn't use because you didn't think it was quite ready for international level. Like, why just call a squad with 4 sets of front rows and say these guys are just developmental? And you saw what happened to Archie Griffin. He basically got crocked in his first game. That was his first high level intensity game, because all his games for Bath have been Premiership Cup level, which are a little, until you get to the knockouts, are a little bit lower standard, because it's meant to be a development competition, even though some teams take it a bit too seriously. Like, why? If Gatland is supposedly one of the best man managers, and that's what makes him a good head coach. I think his man management of this squad has been fucking atrocious. And I know we said we weren't going to pick on individuals, but ultimately the buck does stop with Gatland.
Yeah.
He's picking a winger who's basically just about getting through. And, you're basically using medieval leeches to keep his knees from exploding. It's infuriating. I get with some players like Alex Mann and Cam Winnett, at least they've been playing regularly week in, week out. But most of them are just, I said, Evan Lloyd shouldn't be anywhere near that squad. I thought it was a typo and he meant Evan Daniel when they announced the squad in the first place. And even then, I thought that was a bit of a weird one, because Evan Daniel hasn't had anything. Go on, Jamie, because I'm going to just carry on.
Well, shall we talk about what Warren Gatland said after the game? Because that leads us on to...
I haven't said about... I'm the only one that actually watched the fucking game, boys.
Yeah, because you're going to talk about George Dawson.
I watched it. No, sorry, Lee, go on, have your say, and then we'll lead on to Gatland. Yeah. I do apologise. Go on, then.
So my bit was that within the scrum, the scrum was fucking shoddy, but I think that goes right the way through the pack. It isn't just the front row. The front row, you've got a relatively inexperienced second row until Rowlands comes on. Your back row isn't necessarily experienced either. You've got Wainwright, who's played at 6 and a little bit at 8. But in terms of, can you bring all of that together? You need somebody within that pack or at coaching level to bring that pack together. And I just thought we found reverse gear really, really quickly. And what we haven't said so far is how well Italy played. And I think
we should pay them credit, actually, shouldn't we? Yeah,
absolute credit to them. But I think the difference with Italy was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe, they started developing their under-18s and their under-20s, and they put a lot of money into developing their under-18s or under-20s. All of their under-20s went to Benetton or Zebra, mainly to Benetton. So they kept them within the system. They'd have a little spell across the border in France, and they toughen them up, and then they went, do you know what? We're going to develop a side. We're not going to magic a side up. We're not going to put 15 players on the park today and expect miracles. We're going to develop a side, and the players that you see on that pitch for Italy now were the players that they've been developing for the last 5-10 years. Stephen Varney, that got released from the Scarlets, he's a Crummock boy, got released from the Scarlets. I think he went to someone in England, and then he went somewhere else, and then he ended up at Gloucester. I think I might be wrong, but I think he played like a Division 2 side, Championship side or whatever, and then
I think he was at Hartbury, the actual side in the Championship.
That would make sense. Yeah, he probably played Hartbury and then went to Gloucester. But Italy were kind of on that development right the way through. Soon as he kind of showed any sign of the fact that, okay, I might not be 100% committed for playing Wales here. Italy were on it. And they've shown what it takes to actually develop a side, whereas we're running around like a bunch of headless chickens trying to punch each other in the face in a dark room with no idea about who we're punching or what we're punching or how to punch. And having been through this a couple of times, I've since early 80s, I've been involved in rugby one way or another, when my dad was playing. And you watch it on the telly and you see what's happening and all of that kind of stuff. And then you see it happening again, and then you see it happening again. And we're just hell-bent on ripping each other apart rather than taking a step back. And I think this comes back to communication from the WRU and from Gatland and, from everyone else to say, right, okay, this is what we're going to do. Nobody within that Welsh setup has said, do you know what, this is what we're aiming for this season. We might have a problem here, we might have a problem there, but this is what we want to get out of this season. And as fans, this is what you can expect this season. And this is what we're doing to develop that. And he's come in with this big fucking halo of, look at me, I'm the saviour. That first Grand Slam he had was Hansen's Grand Slam. All the work for that year had been done building up to it. Yeah?
Done by the Ospreys, you mean?
Yeah. I think you're thinking of the 2005 Grand Slam, the Ruddock one.
So
yeah, that would have been after Hansen,
and then when we come into Gatland's one, it's kind of he's sitting there with a really well developed team.
It certainly wasn't Gareth Jenkins. I'll tell you that.
No, but Gareth Jenkins we go. But this is my point. Yeah, we'll sit there and we go, oh, he was shit and he was shit and he was shit. Yeah, and people go, but Payback selected 50-odd players and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so some of those players needed to be selected and have come through. People like Reffel have come through, and have shown to be absolutely superb players. Yeah, Costello. All right, he didn't have a good game on the weekend, but he's shown that he's perfectly capable. Yeah, so that's why I say we're obsessed with let's sit there and slag each other off instead of let's sit back and go, right, what actually needs doing? Because there's a whole load of stuff in Welsh rugby that needs doing that isn't on that pitch on Saturday, but it's all the stuff that leads to that pitch. So, I thought I tried to find some positives in that game on Saturday. I could not find any.
No, it's tough, isn't it? Yeah.
I was genuinely looking at stuff and going, what can we talk about in a positive light that went well? And there was nothing. I tell you what I found. We used 5 people in the lineup. Yeah, we have 5 catches in the lineup. So great.
Costello caught a line out.
Yeah, how the fuck that happens, I don't know. But
quick throw-ins.
Actually, we've got.
I've had this argument with Hugh every time.
They class a quick throw-in as a thing, as a lineup. But realistically,
I caught a line out, and I never actually went in the line out at all on the weekend. It was just the other team just really badly overthrew it.
But we've developed 4 line-out jumpers. Adam Beard did nothing else around the rest of the pitch. He had 5 line-outs. He did, because I've checked the stats today, mate.
Yeah, he had a
really
no. He conceded a penalty.
No, but he was the lowest in terms of contact. He was the lowest in terms of meters beyond contact. He was the lowest in terms of meters made. He was the lowest in terms of carries. Literally, the only thing.
That.
Yeah, but that's
so. Right.
You're 6. Yeah, but when you're 6 foot 8,
scrummaging was shit.
When you're 6 foot 8,
because that's not what he does.
No, when you're 6 foot 8,
none of our forwards carry.
When you're 6 foot 8 and 18 and a half, 19 stone, and you're second row, your job is to carry the ball into contact. Yeah, he passed the ball 9 times. He took the ball into contact once. Yeah, his job as a second row should be to go into contact and suck in 3 or 4 players. He's a big boy. He's a heavy boy. He's a quick boy. Yeah, he needs to be doing that role. To turn around to him and say, be a distributor at 10, which is what he ended up being. He passed the ball 9 times. Yeah, he passed the ball the same amount of times as the Italian outside half. Yeah, and that's why we're in that position where actually we need a bit of bulk. When Rowlands came on, that's why it looked like Rowlands was having a massive impact, because he was actually doing the job of a second row and taking it on. Yeah.
Right. Can I say you're both absolutely right in what you're saying? Okay. Lee is right in terms of saying that Adam Beard, for his size, should carry better. And Harley is right in saying that's not what Adam Beard is in the team for. Right? You are both absolutely right. And as someone, as the person who has literally watched Adam Beard since his debut, and probably watched every game that Adam Beard's played for the Ospreys, right? Adam Beard has never been a carrier, right? He can carry. I've seen it, and he hits lovely lines, right? He runs the right angles, right? He has never been a carrier. It's probably the weakest part of his game. He has always been a fantastic distributor of the ball. He has got one of the best passes and range of passing from a forward that I have seen, right? He has always, by any team that has used him to distribute the ball. If you look at any of the games Ospreys have won, lost, drawn, whatever, right? He is the forward that passes the ball most, right? He's got high offload stats, and he's also, that's what he's always, that he's a link player. Now, Lee, you are absolutely right that he should be carrying the ball more. He's 6'8" and weighs an ungodly amount, right? He should carry more. But you're asking a player to do something he's never done and step out of doing no, right?
But that's kind of my point, James. Yeah,
no, I'm not finished.
But let me finish the bit that I was talking about. We're trying to find positivity. Yeah, where the only positivity that you've got for Adam Beard is the line out, but actually you've also developed 3 other jumpers in that line out. So actually, we don't rely on Adam Beard in there. So when Rowlands comes in, yeah, you've then got a ball carrier, and you look at I think as a whole, our forwards made less than 70 meters with ball in hand. At international level, you cannot do that. That's like saying an outside half can kick 3 meters and have a good game. It's not.
But
we need to get back to what do second rows do? What does the back row do? Yeah, and with the best will in the world, we need somebody in there that's gonna make big meters.
But you're also harking back to roles that arguably don't exist on a rugby pitch anymore.
Italy did it, mate. Italy did it. England did it. Ireland did it.
Right. Okay. But there's no bulk in that back row either. But yet,
so use the boys with bulk.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
What I'm saying is right. Yeah, you've got Adam Beard, right? He's a line-out option. He's at 5 line-outs in the weekend. He passed the ball 10 times, right? Then you've got who's your other second row? Dav Jenkins. He only carried 7 times. Didn't make many meters, but he hits rucks. Right?
He was our top tackler. He was sorry, no, he was 1 tackle behind Reffel. I think it was 1 or 2 tackles.
I'll tell you now. I have got the stats here. But yeah, so that's what he's Ian Goff from Porthcawl, right? He's the Porthcawl Ian Goff is essentially what David Jenkins is. Then you've got, right, who are your back rowers, right? So if you play Rafael, obviously Rafael's a fetcher. Yeah, there's no doubt in saying he's a fetcher. He's there to jackal the ball, right? Who's a number 8? What's Wainwright do? Wainwright is a main source of line-up ball and he's a carrier, right? Wales have never, in the modern era, apart from Luke Charteris, Wales have never used their second rows as like main source of line-up ball. Not in Gatland's era apart from Charteris, have Wales used second rows as their main source of line-up ball. Who was the main source of line-up ball for Wales? It was Justin Tippett.
Wainwright. Last weekend it was Wainwright.
I talk about that era.
But the point there, what I don't want to do is go down, like slagging people. I'm not slagging Beard off. What I'm saying is, right, that we need to look at why is this? Just take that game on Saturday, and strip away all the other bollocks. We still should have won that game on Saturday if we'd have played the managed the people correctly, wound them up, prepared them for that game properly, and put the right people on the park. And that's where Gatland and his Halo complex, where I can't do any wrong, is tripping us up at the minute. Yeah. And I think there's the analogy I always use with my players and with committees and with clubs and all of that kind of stuff is it's a jigsaw. And everybody within that jigsaw needs to know where they are, what they're doing, and they need to know that overall picture. And at the minute, I don't think we've got an overall picture, and I don't know how each of those players fits into that jigsaw to make that picture. Okay. And that was I really looked to try and find some positives, and there weren't any. And that's where I'm struggling with it. But I want to move on from that from a second, because we've got to, before we move on to the rest of it, I just want to talk about that head contact between Grady and the small Italian
Lorenzo
fella.
Pani.
That's the boy. So, Jamie, what did you make of that contact? Because it looked worse in slow motion where you see the water coming off and the sweat coming off. It looked horrendous. But what did you make of that?
Well, just to say that on Saturday, I didn't see the game live, as I said, but I had a message from Progressive Rugby. They got in contact with me and they said, "Hi, Jamie Fowinus, hope you're well." And they told me this. So Progressive Rugby were deeply disappointed with the decision not to remove either Lorenzo Pani or Mason Grady from the field as a precaution following a clash of heads in the 61st minute of the Six Nations fixture between Wales and Italy. Professor John Fairclough said the failure to remove either Lorenzo Pani or Mason Grady following a clear and obvious high-speed clash of heads again calls into question the elite game's desire to cement the welfare of its players as its number one priority. We ask again that we learn the lessons of the past and the default position to be to err on the side of caution to mitigate risk to short and long-term brain health. Now, I watched that game back on Sunday and I saw the incident. And first of all, they reviewed it for foul play, and I think it was the right decision by the referee to class it as a rugby incident, because they were reviewing it to see if Mason Grady had committed foul play. And I do agree, it was just one of those unfortunate incidents. However, I have to say, having seen the incident, I am really surprised that neither player went off for HIAs. Pani came off the worst of it, and he was in no man's land. He looked absolutely fucked. Yeah. So I don't normally like questioning these decisions because I'm not a healthcare professional. And I think a lot of people spout off about this and they're not qualified to do so. So I'm very cautious about, I'm not a healthcare professional. I don't know. But to me, and if Progressive Rugby and their, professor is saying they should have gone off, then clearly they should have gone off. And you saw the incident as well, Lee. Would you agree that they should have gone off HIAs? I was very surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have expected a HIA as a bare minimum. And the thing is this year they've trialed these gum shields, which they've been trialing in academies and in URC games for a couple of years now. And there's a little sensor inside these gum shields, and if you get any head contact or whatever that makes the gum shield move at a certain rate, then it's a HIA, and there's alarms go off in somebody's things that says, we need to pull this player off for a HIA. But just looking at that, even at full speed, the guy is sparked on the floor. It was a chip over the top, or it was a bouncing ball, or whatever it was, and both players are going for the ball. So I get, it was a rugby incident. Yeah, I get that. That doesn't stop you caring for the players' welfare, and to not, I think sometimes referees try to separate themselves too much. You've got two players on the floor, both sparked. You've got the Italian physio running onto the pitch, and the first thing he does is he goes into the neck brace position behind the player on the floor. So he's seen something. You don't go into that position as your automatic first place. He's seen something and he's gone. There's something there which needs to be looked at. How did nobody else pick that up and say, do you know what, we got at least one player sparked, another player groggy, let's get him off? I think it's disgraceful. I really, really do. Particularly with all the other stuff that's going on with head injuries, concussions. On the weekend, we saw the first guy in Australia, the first rugby league player to die from head injuries. I forget what the condition's called, which probably isn't a good thing. But do you know what I mean? Yeah, we're starting to see the effects of it now, of guys that have been doing this for the last 10, 15, 20 odd years. These people are now in a position where they can't remember their kids' names. They can't remember where they live. They can't feed themselves, and now they're dying, and we're worried about, are Wales going to come back from this and put 5 points on, and we need to keep Grady on the pitch? It's not right. It's not right.
Yeah, very surprising. Very surprising, I have to say. Right. Can we talk about Warren Gatland's comments after the game? Because I think we do need to talk about this.
Which ones? which ones do you want to start on? You want to start on the George North ones where he said he was better 10 years ago than he is now? Do you want to start on the ones after the game where he said I should resign? Or do you want to do the Scrum 5 ones where he said I'd never go and watch a regional game?
Right, well, let's talk about what he said after the game at the press conference. So Warren Gatland revealed that he offered his resignation to the WRU CEO. Big O rejected, okay? So Gatland was asked by a journalist if he planned to stay in the job until the 2027 World Cup in Australia. Gatland said this: "Yes, absolutely. I've made that commitment. I just said to Abby in the changing room, if you want me to resign, I'm quite happy to do that. She said, like hell, that's the last thing I want. That's what I'm really afraid of. But I can promise you we'll go away and review this really carefully. We've already done some review stuff and we'll work on areas that need to improve." I think this was really clever by Gatland, because what he's done there is kill the speculation dead straight away after the game, because there would have been a lot of speculation in the media, online with fans and pundits about his future. So first of all, he's killed it dead. He's controlling the narrative. And this is something that he actually wrote about in his Daily Telegraph column, because he's written about this throughout the Six Nations. He spoke about controlling the narrative. This is what Gatland's doing now. He controls the narrative. He killed the speculation dead. Secondly, he knew full well, he put his resignation in, if it's believed to be true, he knew full well that WRU were never going to sack him. He knows that. He knows he's untouchable now, because the WRU have paid a lot of money to bring Gatland in, right? The WRU last year paid £2 million in severance pay. Half of that went to Steve Phillips. There is no way they're going to pay Gatland off now. The money isn't there. And also, Abby Tierney, she's only been in the job for less than 3 months. No chance was she going to make a huge decision like that to say to Gatland, yes, actually, we will accept your resignation. So I thought Warren Gatland's been very clever by doing that, because he's controlling the narrative. He's killing the speculation dead. We saw it on Scrum 5 on Sunday night. Yet again, Warren Gatland, he went on there, to be fair, he fronted up. Lauren Jenkins asked him some difficult questions, but he was controlling the narrative, saying, we're building for the next World Cup. We need time. We need patience. We got youngsters. We're learning. He knows what he's doing, Gatland. He's not dumb. But here's the question I got for you, lads, and I asked this on my Dragon Slayer pod last night. Should the WRU have accepted Gatland's resignation? Do any of you actually think Abby Tierney should have made a big decision? Because Andrew Coombs said that she's already failed in her first big test. So do any of you think Abby Tierney should have said, yeah, okay, Warren, we'll accept your resignation? Or do you think it was right for Abby Tierney to reject it? Any of you can answer that.
I think it'd be great for her to call his bluff, because I don't think he had any intention of actually resigning. I think, like you said, control narrative. The big problem is, who do you get in? That's the thing. The only coach available is probably Jamie Joseph.
Mm.
And do you think anyone really outside? Like, I mean, Ron Gatland was a bit of an unknown, apart from being known. He was hated in Ireland when he came in. There's not really anyone to bring in. And are you going to promote one of the regional coaches?
Dwayne Peel.
On his booth, and James would kill us.
You'd say that.
Like, I mean, Di Young, promote him out of the Catholic role because he won't be paid enough to, need to worry about that. But then you're going to have the same issue with Pivac. Or any time we've had a regional coach come in, the other three will go, well, he's just picking all his boys.
We're not having that.
That's all his boys. Yeah, we're not having that.
Yeah.
And, and Di Young left under enough of a cloud that, let's be fair, would even the Cardiff players want to play for him? Never mind the other regions. It's... Gatland knows he got this year's grace. I think his bullshit before the tournament, where he tried to do his usual thing of trying to big up the team, just didn't work. Because I've said I just don't think we've got the structure or the cohesion going. Like the reason why you can throw a novice 10 into a system is if you've got a good system in place. That's why it's worked well with Ireland.
Yeah.
Whereas we're basically trying to redo things from scratch, and I just don't think the level of detail's there. And again, like, frankly, yes, do you know what? We've had a shit Six Nations. But remember, that's only our second wooden spoon in Six Nations time. Actually, arguably could have and should have won the first two games. The France game were fine. I think that was an absolute selection balls up on Gatland. He should have put more power on the bench and not just, inexperienced kids. Well, that's by the by. I think the proof of the pudding is that I think we need to... I almost feel like we need to forget Team Wales at the moment. I know it's hard to say because it does generate the income. But until we sort out where the W is allocating money, like I feel like Sam Warburton's point and Dave Buttress's points that have been on Twitter since have been far more important than this distraction, the dead cat like Gatland's thrown out. If anything, I feel like that's helping the WRU more than anything. Because what we should be focusing is like, why are our under-20s so chronically underpowered? Why are our under-18s only able to get fluke wins against teams when all their best players are gone? Why is everyone so underpaid? Why is the fitness... Like, if Gatland isn't happy with the coaching at the regions, why isn't he more hands-on with it? One thing I would say is when they were asking about his, do you go and watch the games? Well, they're going to be getting footage from all the cameras in those games. And frankly, you will see far more from that footage than you will standing in the pitch. I don't care what you say. I will go to the games and I'll watch stuff and think, what the fuck was that about? And I have to go back and watch the game to find out. So, I don't think... I think the only reason you want the head coach there showing up face is because then it gives people the impression, oh, he's there and it's thing. I doubt there's any less analysis going on. Other than, he's not, freezing his ass off in Llanelli on a Friday night.
You could do it in the middle of summer, mate. It's fucking freezing. But the point of him going to games and going to training sessions and spending time...
sessions is the one I
yeah,
do.
but spending time... Well, even spending time at just out in the regions, is he gets to talk to people and he gets to understand, that's a two-way conversation going back and forth. And that's what he misses when he sat at home in New Zealand reviewing all the videos that have come in from the weekend. That's lovely, yeah, that's great. What he doesn't get is what it means to the fans that turn up every week. Yeah. He doesn't. I went to see Scarlets Ospreys game Boxing Day years and years and years ago, and parked in the Morrison's car park. Didn't get a fine for it, which you would do now. Nobody parked there now, you'd get a fine. But the car I followed behind had Howley and Jenkins. Yeah, so I parked. I said, "Oh, fuck this! I'm just going to go and park wherever they are." And I walked in with my boy. And we if you've been to the stadium, that bit where you walk down. And I was quite pleasant to Howley at the time. And I just had a chat with him. But you know what? They were both there talking to players, talking to fans. They were both, just being polite and all of that kind of stuff. But they were there. They were showing their face and they were talking to people and they were like, what are you expecting? All of that kind of stuff. You don't get that sat at home in New Zealand watching a video. And I think that's some of the stuff that we've spent so long trying to take out of the game that we've gone too far. We've lost the passion. We've lost that bit that when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when it comes down to that game against Italy, where you actually want a bit of gnarl and a bit of nastiness, and you want 5 forwards to take it up and go, do you know what, son, you're fucking having this. When you need those players to stand up, yeah, and you've just spent 10 years taking all the passion out of the game, there's no passion left there. There's no buttons to press. There's nothing there that says, do you know what, you've heard the Phil Bennett speech about, they've closed our minds and all of this kind of stuff. There's none of that there. There's no buttons that we can press on those players now to get them up a notch on that game. And that's what we're missing by him not being at games, by not being involved in the regions, by not being there on a day-to-day basis. And, he'll have a hard time of it on Scrum 5, and then he fucks off home to New Zealand for 6 months. And he'll come back for the autumns, and then he'll pick it up again.
So to the original question then, should the WRRAP have accepted Gatland's resignation? If he was Abby Tyranny now and Gatland comes to you and say, I'm handing in my resignation, what would you do?
No, of course you wouldn't. You'd be stupid too. It's like Harley said, there's no one else to get in. Who are you going to do? You're going to promote from within. Who are your options? Richard Whiffen, fuck me. Rob Howley, it's not 2013. Jonathan Humphreys, God no. Is Scott Johnson still around? I don't know. The only other names I've seen banded about, right? Steve Tandy. And the last time Steve Tandy coached a Welsh team, he had a punch up with Dan Bigger, and Brendan Leonard led a revolt against him. I love Steve Tandy, right? He's far better suited as a defence coach, right? You're not getting Sean Edwards back, and quite frankly, I think his reputation is tarnished a bit now after France this year. Jamie Joseph is the other one. He's got a job at the minute. He's DOR of the Highlanders on a fat contract with the NZRU. He ain't going anywhere. Who else are you going to get in? Like Richard Wiggles. Honestly, there's for the what it ended up being. It'd be a hipster's choice. The casual rugby fan, the Six Nations fan, won't know and will write off instantly.
Yeah.
Right? And if that person came in, right, and said and was like, we're not going to win the Six Nations this year, we're very much in a transition year, this is not my squad, then the fans return. Right? Gatland was very fortuitous in that 2008 Grand Slam, right? He inherited, let's be fair, an Osprey squad that was Galactico, 13 Ospreys at the top of their game that essentially won him the Grand Slam, or started off that process of beating England away, right? And then of course the fans are good. People forget that we were shit the next year. We were crap until 2012, really. Well, we had a good 2011 World Cup. We weren't great.
Yeah.
We forget that a bit. There was still 4 years between 2008 and 2012. And then 2012, 2013 happened. Absolutely. Yeah, I'll give you that. 2015, good World Cup. And then 2019, like there's still plenty, but the casual rugby fan's going to forget that because Gatland is so established and won a Grand Slam in his first go. Eddie Jones, right? He got a bit of stick towards the end, still won the Grand Slam first year with England, right? Still a good coach. There is no one currently in world rugby that is without a job and be affordable. Like Harley said, who are you going to do? Promote Toby Booth, right? God, he wouldn't. That's not the type of job Toby Booth would want. They went over it some blood and mud, right? You're not gonna get Di Flanagan. You're not gonna get Di Young. You're not gonna get Dwayne Peel or whoever it is, Albert Vanderberger, who was the Scarlets forward coach. There is no one, right? So you'd be stupid and you'd be paying off an absurd amount of money to Gatland over a stupid life cycle. It's just, as much as I don't agree with Gatland's tactics or his coaching staff or his haircut, right? He's not worth getting rid of. It's not worth it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I just think I'd be interested to know what Abby Tierney thought about Gatland making those comments, because I read an article today, it's a really good opinion piece from Ben James in Wales Online. And he wrote that in a way now Gatland has undermined Abby Tierney's authority a little bit by making that conversation public. And I just don't like some of the stuff that Gatland have said since he's come back to us. Now, I am supportive of Gatland. I don't hate Gatland, as one particular person on Twitter said. I am genuinely supportive of him. No, I genuinely am. But I have to say, I'm not happy with some of the stuff he said in the media, you know, throwing Alex Mann under the bus like that, blaming the regions for a losing environment. You know, he's blamed the region, saying they're not winning games and criticising their facilities. Well, it's ironic now, isn't it? Because they're coming from a losing environment, the regional players, into another losing environment. Gatland has created now a losing environment. You know, I do think he needs to show a little bit more tact and responsibility. But like I said, he's very clever. He is controlling the narrative. But, you know, I am supportive of Gatland. But is he above scrutiny? Absolutely not. And I think we can question some of the stuff he's been saying in the media and question his selections throughout this tournament. He hasn't got it right. He simply hasn't.
So if I was Abby Tierney, it's easy to talk in hindsight. I think he caught her off guard, in all honesty, at the end of that. And when you're head honcho, the last thing you want to do is undermine the people that are around you. And somebody says, do you want me to resign? You go, what? If you'd have turned around and said, come and see me on Monday, we'll talk about it on Monday, that shifts the power back. Yeah. And it's like, right, okay, I'm not going to give you an answer now. We need to do a review, and then I'll tell you if I want you. If he resigns, there's no payout. Yeah. You resign, that's no, if he resigns, that's his option to break his contract. But yeah, I suppose I'd be very surprised if anything was written into a contract that says if you decide to resign, you'll get a severance pay. Yeah, severance pay tends to be, we don't want you here anymore, so here's a wad of cash, now fuck off. But
if it was old WRU though, that sounds exactly the sort of thing they write into a contract.
It could be written on the back of a fag packet, couldn't it? But yeah, you're right, Jen. It's power games. That's where it is. It's power games, and the one thing we don't need right now is another revisit of the late 80s, early 90s. We don't need that. We don't need to have who's in charge and who's got the biggest balls. It just won't do anybody any good, and it'll take far too long to get out the other side of it. So yeah, in hindsight, you'd have said, come and see me Monday, but I think he caught her off guard. But I agree with you. I don't like the tone of this particular coaching spell, if you like. So
we all need to work together, don't we? Everybody needs to be on the same page. I just think some of the stuff that Gatland has said hasn't helped. But also as well, at what point does the Welsh rugby public, particularly, you know, the fair weather fans, we know what they're like, when does their patience begin to run out with Gatland? Because at the moment, he's got a bit of time. Like I said, he's controlling the narrative. You say we're a young team. There are people out there who are very supportive of Gatland. But if we keep losing like this, at what point does the patience start to wear thin of the Welsh rugby public? That's my question. And I just wonder, will Gatland get to the next World Cup? Will there come a point where the WRU have to say, okay, we need to start doing something about this now? I'm just interested to see at what point did the Welsh rugby public start to turn on Gatland, because it hasn't quite happened yet. There's been criticism of him, but when that Welsh rugby public starts to turn and the interest dies and the attendances start to fall off, that'll be very interesting. That'll really test the WRU's resolve, won't it?
And I think that's when it hits that when they can't sell tickets for Six Nations, when Wales, New Zealand in the autumn internationals. Well, this will be the last year we have autumn internationals, won't it? It all changes next year, doesn't it? So, you know, when you get to the autumn internationals and you can't sell out the autumn internationals, then And ultimately, that's the way the professional game is. Money talks. So that's where we are. Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in that Wales-Italy game? Or the four? I think we'll get to the end of the season. We'll have to do a couple of sessions on what's wrong with Welsh rugby at the end of the season. But
not
let's walk
necessarily
from there.
Not necessarily Wales, Italy, but who do you think over the Six Nations? Who do you think Wales' best player is, and who do you think the most underrated player has been? So, right, I think in terms of best, flat out best, has been Tommy Raffel.
Yeah.
I don't think he's put, and second to that would be Aaron Wainwright.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's a toss up between those two, Rafael and Wainwright. Yeah.
I just think Wainwright, Raffel's just been that bit more consistent in his specialist area, especially. And I think underrated. I do think Gareth Thomas. He came in late, and he's been his effort levels, his work rate. It's just ridiculous. He was Wales' top carrier on the weekend. You know, and the tackles he puts in, you know, all right, scrum's not been great, but that's not been down to him. Like you try going with Willie Antonio, you know.
Again, that was just a sheer weight thing.
I think he's been Wales' most underrated performer by far. Go on, Jamie.
I'd say just out of that breakthrough player, I'd say he can win it. I know his last game and a half, I'd say it's been a bit iffy, but I thought he came to international rugby and demandable. And I'd like to add Elliot D to best Wales players. I know people have issues with his scrummaging, but I mean that's not all. Again, similar to Gareth Thomas, that's not all him. But I think for me, the mark of how important he is to Wales is just how bad things go when he's not on the pitch. We lose a carrying threat. We lose someone who can slow down ball. I know Rafael's been brilliant at it, but he can't do it on his own. You know, the lineup goes wonky. I mean, admittedly, Evan Lloyd on Saturday, I thought did quite well in the second cap in the lineup. But I don't think he was asked to do too much, to be fair. But yeah, I thought he had a really good tournament. Rio Dyer, I think, as well, probably he's been getting a lot of shit I've seen on social medias, and frankly, it's undeserved. I think he's been brilliant. I think he's so much better than he was this time last year. You know, he's actually, he's running with a bit more, some of his carries against France were getting us across the game line because he was just, forces mass times acceleration. He hasn't quite got the mass, but he's sure as fucking hell has acceleration. And that's what's been getting us in and punch. Jiffy spent the whole of the game moaning about, oh, no one's accelerating to contact, but you give the ball to Dyer and he goes through. I mean, that goes to one of my other problems with the Welsh squad. Whenever we did make a line break, no one was there. You have Rio Dyer and Thomas Williams make a line break, and then there was no one. And then we got turned over, and then we were back down the half. That's by the by. Yeah, I thought. Yeah, I think Rafael Wainwright, Elliot D, probably the best three in the tournament. Lee? Other than George Ross here and us?
For me, I'd go with Wainwright as being my outstanding player for the Six Nations, just because, for a number 8, all right, he's not the bulky ball carrier, but what he does with his feet and with his hands, he does. I'd say if you put him up there against Faletau, he more than holds his own. So I think we found our replacement for Faletau. I would like to see a bigger, bulkier runner either side of him, but I think he's been superb. I don't think he's put a foot wrong, even with that hair and moustache. I think the only thing he's put wrong is that moustache, if I'm honest. But other than that,
the moustache is great.
I don't know. It's just with that hair, that mopper hair, it just looks weird. Anyway,
but also I wouldn't tell him in person.
I'd say James said that, and then I'd run.
He folds like IKEA furniture.
So underrated. God. I'd say Alex Mann, just because he's so small for the position that he needs to play. He's so small. He's more than held his own. He hasn't dominated anybody, but he's another 2 years, and he'll absolutely be there. in all honesty, nobody in that whole Six Nations can put their hand up and say, I've had a fantastic Six Nations. That everyone's had an off game, and I think that's been the issue. We've had too many. You can cope with maybe one, maybe two of your key players having off days, but when 5 or 6 of them are having off days, it's just not going to go well. So, yeah, they're my two. Jamie?
Yeah, I think best player, I think it's a toss of a coin between Rafael and Wainwright. I think both have been really, really good. Yeah, I agree with Harley. I think most underrated Elliot D. He never lets Wales down, whether he's on the bench, whether he starts. I think he's been really good throughout this tournament, and it's been nice to see him starting games. Yes, he doesn't have the bulk of Ryan Elias. I get that, but he always hits his targets. Whatever anyone says about Elliot D, he always hits his targets. The lineout always functions well when you start. So
and he does the spinny thing.
And he does the spinny thing on his finger. It's very clever. It's very good.
I like the spinny. Ryan Elias would get confused with doing the spinny thing and just drop the ball, I think.
Absolutely.
It's too much brain power.
In terms of I'm making this up now because this just wasn't the question. I'd say Rio Dyer is Wales' most improved player, because I think he's really come on leaps and bounds now in this tournament. And look, don't get me wrong. Yes, there were some defensive lapses on the weekend. He can be called out defence, but that boy works his socks off. You all know that. He is so good now, Rio, and he's getting better and better. He has established himself as a test match winner, and I'm really pleased to see that. So, yeah, those would be my choices. But also a special mention for Cam Winnett. He wasn't very good against France. I thought he was nervy, but I think he's got a lot of potential, and he is going to get better and better. And yeah, Lee as well. Alex, man, he is too lightweight at this level. Gatland is right. He needs to put on, some more weight and add a bit of bulk. But he's been really, really impressive, hasn't he? So yeah, there were positives to come out of this tournament. Yeah, exactly. As well, it'll take time, but there have been some positive individual performances in this tournament, at least.
Okay. Let's
one last one. Try. Okay. What's everyone's favourite Wales try of the tournament? For me, I'm going to go with, even though it almost wasn't, and he did the wrong thing, but he scored. I thought the Joe Roberts one against France was my absolute favourite.
Okay, I'm going to agree
with that one, though.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Harley.
He always butchered it.
Yeah,
he always butchered the liner, didn't he?
I can't remember. I can't remember them through my head and go, okay, which one was which? So yeah, I'll just agree with Harley.
I'm going to say Alex Mann for England. When Thomas Williams made that break, that was my favourite.
Cool.
I like the Ospreys top try scorer, missed a penalty try. England, with agent Ethan Roots conceding the yellow card, so that Wales could score. He did his best, bless him, but even Wales were so bad we fucked. I like that drive them all a lot, though. No, but seriously, I think that Alex Mann try against England, it just didn't see it coming at all. And yeah, he has surprised me. I still stand by my comments. I said to Harley at the start of the season, he needs, for me, a season at regional level. But look, I'm glad he's got his caps. There's not many Aberdare boys who
are the best six in the regions at the moment, other than when Dave Fifita plays at 6.
Yes, and I don't think we can persuade
because
him.
All the Osprey sixes keep getting injured.
Right, gents, we're going to have to leave the Six Nations there for another year, but like I say, we'll come back to at the end of the season. We'll come back and do a full deep dive, as is a fashionable term now, into where Welsh rugby is. So we're going to have to quickly rip through this in terms of URC is back this weekend. We have 4 games. We've got Glasgow against Cardiff. We've got Ospreys against Munster. We've got Scarlets against Benetton, and we've got Dragons against the Bulls. So what we'll do is you review your own game and then give me your predictions for your own game and everything else. Okay? So, Harley, your assessment of Glasgow versus Cardiff and your predictions, if you will, please.
So, let's be fair. Glasgow are probably going to get a fair few players back from the Scotland squad. Cardiff will probably get, if we're lucky, Teddy Williams and Seb Davis if they haven't been fucked in training. It's going to be fucking awful. It's one of the teams going for the title against one of the teams trying to not be in the bottom four. I can't say anything. Like, I'm being very optimistic when I say Glasgow by 15.
Glasgow by 15. Okie dokie. And Ospreys Munster. Prediction?
So
No. You can do your review of that. I'm just going Harley because normally,
sorry.
normally Harley
Ospreys
fills all of his
Munster.
in because he's a good boy, but he forgot his laptop this week, so he couldn't fill them all in. So he's going to have to do them now. So Ospreys Munster, just your prediction. Don't give me the whole game thing. Just give me your prediction.
Oh, Munster by 3.
Munster by 3. Okay. And Scarlets Benetton.
Is it Scarlet's home game?
Scarlets at home.
Oh, Benetton by 1 then.
Okay. And Dragons Bulls. Dragons are at home.
Bulls by 12.
Bulls by 12.
Changed actually.
Okay. So, James, Ospreys Munster.
So we do have the press conference was today, so we do actually have some news. I haven't watched the full thing because it's come out while we've been on air. So the main things that come out from that, I understand that Max Nagy and Hugh sat in the back. So Ospreys held went up to Bristol for a training session in the week, just like Harlequins did for Cardiff. And we sort of knew from that Sutton and Nagy were back. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one because I haven't seen who Munster are getting back, because obviously their players will all be on the piss. So it's fair to say that Peter O'Mahony, Crowley, Calvin Nash, maybe Conor Murray won't be at Swans.com on Friday, but they're still champions, and they're still champions for a reason. I'm going to go Ospreys by 7. But I feel like that's going to change on Wednesday. Actually, it's not, because we're reviewing the best Ospreys v Munster game on Wednesday, so I'm going to come up saying by Ospreys about 28 by the end of Wednesday evening.
Okay. So, just your predictions then. Glasgow, Cardiff.
Glasgow by 8.
Glasgow by 8. Okay. Benetton at Scarlets.
Benetton by 4.
Benetton by 4. And Bulls at Dragons.
Bulls by 9 wickets.
9 wickets.
It's going to be a fucking cricket score. I'll go Bulls by 16.
Bulls by 16. Okay. Bulls by 60. Okay, Jamie, so you can start with Dragons v Bulls.
Yeah, it's a really tough game, isn't it? I remember the last time Bulls came to Ronnie Parade, and I could not get over how big their forwards were. They've got a massive... When you see them in the flesh as well, see them in the stands, they are huge. They're a lot of people's favourites to win the URC. We really struggled against this scrum. I remember that when they came to Ronnie Parade, our scrum just got taken to the cleaners. We could not cope with the power. And I'm afraid it's going to be a similar story on Saturday night. Now, we do have a lot of injuries. We had 19 players unavailable. I'm hoping now, with the break, that we've got some players back. The injury list may have eased slightly. So it'd be really good to have the likes of Harrison Keddy back, Ollie Griffiths, Lloyd Fairbrother, who's been missed in the scrum. But it's very difficult to see Dragons getting anything from this. Because I just don't see how they can cope with the power. You know, if we get any parity up front, then maybe, just maybe, we can get a try bonus point like they did out in Ulster, which was a really good effort. But again, we had no scrum, really, no platform. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult night for the Dragons. In terms of predictions, I said on the Dragon Slayer podcast, I predicted Bulls by 14. I think they'll win by at least 2 scores, but it could be more. But I'm going to say Bulls by 14.
Bulls by 14. Okay. Let's go up then. So, prediction of Scarlets Benetton.
I go feeling Scarlets will win this, but I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why, but I just got a feeling they'll edge this one. How many Italian internationals are Benetton going to get back?
That's why
That's
I said
the question.
Benetton by 4, not Benetton by 4.
But then you've got the international quality second choice players.
I know it indeed, but if Benetton have their internationals back, that's going to strengthen them even more, isn't it? So I still got a feeling Scots going to win. I'm going to say Scots by 2.
2. Okay, Cookie. Ospreys Munster.
I'm going to say Ospreys by 5. I think they'll have just enough to get the job done.
Okay, Cookie. And Cardiff Glasgow.
Very tough place to go, Scotstoun. Cardiff got a lot of players available, haven't they? I don't see the likes of Man, Winnett, and etc. coming back. So I think Glasgow by 8.
Cookie. So,
Far too generous, Jamie.
Maybe, I don't know. But it's a tough place to go, Scotstoun, isn't it? Very, very difficult.
I think it's going to be 3 scores at least.
It could be, yeah.
Okay, so I'll do Scarlets Benetton then. Quite a few players back from injury apparently, but we'll find out later in the week. Everything has been really, really quiet in terms of social media and here's what we're doing and all that kind of stuff. So it's hard to know what's been going on. I mean, it's finger in the air times. If it clicks, the defense was starting to click in patches. If we string that together for 80 minutes instead of 60, then it'll go well. And the attack will be the attack. We even when we're getting a paste in, when we get the ball, we can attack. So it's whether that defensive system is starting to twinkle and whether we can stop them doing anything. If we can stop them, then I'm comfortable that we'll put some tries on them. But it's whether it works or not. So I'm going to go Scarlets by 1.
What a shock. Who saw that coming?
So Glasgow, Cardiff, I'm going to go Glasgow by 10. Even with the amount of players that they've got not coming back. No, I think you underrate yourself, Harley. I think the potential is there, and I think
I've watched this play, and I've watched Glasgow play.
No, I think you've got potential to turn them over. It doesn't take much to have an off game, but Glasgow have been firing on all cylinders, even without their best players so far this season. So yeah, I think it'll be a good one. Ospreys Munster. See, I think this is going to be the closest game of the weekend. I think it'll go on a penalty either way. So I'm going to go Ospreys by 1 on that one. And then, Dragons v Bulls. Yeah, I'm going to struggle to call the Dragons on that one, Jamie.
Really? You do surprise me.
Even trying to wind you up and trying to stir it for you. So, I'm going to go Bulls by 15 on that one. I think that's going to be a real difficult night for you. But they say losing bonus point at the end of the season might make all the difference on that. Mm-hmm. Lovely jubbly. Right. Okay. So we will obviously go into the games a bit more on our own pod. So Jamie, you've done that already with the Dragons pod. The Dragons Lair is available already for Dragons fans to listen to. So Scarlets will also be out same time as this one. When at Cardiff recording this week, Harley?
We still haven't sorted that out because I can't do Wednesday and Cowan can't do Thursday, and they're the only 2 nights normally were available. So it could be someone we need to find a ringer to come in. I'm trying to sort out.
Interesting. James might have to put his blue shirt on. He might have to kind of like put and his little bobble hat and his little.
You don't want me on the Cardiff pod because the amount of times I will say the word proud, right? I will get fucking banned.
I'll be honest, I'd much rather just record an episode on my own.
Talking to the wall.
If you want balance, you invite Yestin on, all right? If you want shithousing, you invite me on.
If I want deep rugby analysis, I'd invite Will Owen on.
Wow, so, stay tuned.
James,
I hear he's coming on another podcast, which is just pure nepotism, if you ask me.
Yeah, so we're tapping into. I think I can announce this now. I might not be able to. But we have Will Owen on the pod on Wednesday. So brother of Robbie, for something that's happening on Wednesday that we'll be able to go into a lot more detail about. And then hopefully we'll talk about that Munster game as well, because it's been I've watched it about 3 times since last week, and I'm just absolutely loving it. So if you want like some good Khan Footwali chat, but also I've been watching. We've been itching to get back into the proper rugby, especially after the George North episode last week, which is going well. So go check out the George North episode if you want a good little tribute to George North that isn't some poetry, which the poetry was very good. But if you want some instead talking about how bad Pro 14 highlights were back in the day, then you can have that instead.
Okay, so
if we're still plugging podcasts, because everyone kept nagging us to get someone from the Cardiff board on to do a podcast. Barely anyone wanted to ask any questions about it when we got a board, but please feel free to listen to it. Yeah, David has promised to come back on after the next board meeting to give us any updates on things.
Are you recording
the progression plan in place?
Yeah, in about 5 minutes, so we need to wrap it up. So Harley, we were going to do the best 15 first names as surnames for last. So we started that last Friday, and we thought, okay, well this will go well. This will be quite a good one. And by lunchtime, we had a Welsh one and one for each of the regions as well, which Jamie the Dragons one was supplied by the Dragons. But I did have to pull them up because they had Jamie Roberts there with an S on the end, and that
I know.
So
yeah. Well, fair play for them to get involved. They didn't have to, did they?
Absolutely.
For the official media account for getting involved. Fair play.
Yeah, that's the
slow day
stuff
to be fair.
Yeah, just have a report on media.
Clearly, the admin was playing Snake in the office and was just desperate for something to come through. To be honest,
probably.
So. Harley, what will this Friday? The plan is to kind of, announce what that best 15 would have been, but we've run out of time. So, what would be this Friday's best 15, mate?
This is one I want people, if they can be asked, to share with their friends who don't support one of the Welsh regions in the IRC. Because for this one, I'd like you to pick the 15 not in your 15. So, 15 players from one of the other 15 teams that in the URC. So. James can't select Rhys Henry. Jamie can't pick Leon Brown. I was going to be extra mean and say that the player couldn't have ever played for your team, but if James is going to pick a Cardiff player, I'm sure he's going to pick one who's also played for the Ospreys.
No,
so you couldn't do Talselli.
No, he can't be selected for anyone.
Current URC players, so they should be registered as a player for one of these teams currently.
Oh well. Scarlets are fucked then because they've got
no one in Wales. There's no Welsh.
Yeah,
there's no Welsh players.
I'd probably just cheat and say I'll have Sam Costello from the Scarlets. To be honest, it'd be Joe Roberts. Let's be honest. I think everyone's Scarlets is Joe Roberts.
Can I just make a team from Cardiff and Dragons players? Probably.
I'm not sure Cardiff and Dragons can make a team just from Cardiff and Dragons players.
There are 16 teams and 15 players, so one from each team. Yeah. That's what we're doing. Yeah,
just
so
not your own.
Just one from. Okay.
Yeah, so right. Manny Lebot from the Stormers, Gezi from Zebra, Mac Hansen from.
Yes, you can't just select 15 Bulls players. You've got to have one.
It's got to be one from each team.
Right. Okay.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Right. Okay. Thinking caps on, gents. Thank you very much for this evening. Pleasure as always. No more Six Nations for a while, so we can just get back to.
Well, Women's Six Nations is on.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
that's a good point.
We've actually we're not going to be anywhere near as awful. We're actually quite decent now in the Women's Six Nations. So we will cover Women's Six Nations next week as we did last year. We had a couple of women guests on last year, didn't we? We had
Tatiat, I think, joined us, and the Irish
girl.
Whose name I can't remember. Was it Christy Haney? No.
Chrissy Haney, yes.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. So we will do our best on that, gents. And on that note, I shall bid you farewell. Enjoy your rugby. See you next week. All the best.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.